What is up, everybody? Happy New Year's Eve. You're watching Philadelphia Eagles now. My name is Chase Sr. We're discussing all of the latest happenings around the Birds going into Week 18, but of course, looking ahead to the NFL playoffs as Philadelphia prepares for the wild card round. And here's everything that's coming up on today's show. According to a report, Eagles going to rest their starters in Week 18 against the Commanders. What does this mean for the Birds? Is this the right decision from head coach Nick Sirianni? Why I believe this Eagles offense can hit another gear once the playoffs come around, given what they've done in the past. Eagles making a roster move. What does Vic Fangio think about this Eagles defense and how well they've been balling out? And how is Jalen Carter feeling? Made his return to the lineup against the Bills, played really well. But about a month ago, he couldn't even do a push-up, which is crazy for such a physical and violent player. But he looked like the dominant force once again on Sunday against the Bills. I do want to begin here, though. What's everybody doing for New Year's Eve tonight? Let me know down in the comment section right now. Just want to know what you're all up to. Got a workout in Westchester this morning. Walked around the borough, bar hopping in Downingtown tonight with some friends. Come back to my buddy's house to watch the ball drop and then running in the Westchester 5K tomorrow. So what are you doing? How are you kicking off the new year? Drop some intel for me down in the comment section right now. All right, Jeff McClain, Philadelphia Inquirer, saying the Eagles expected to rest quarterback Jalen Hurts and most of the starters in the season finale against the Commanders. Sources told the Inquirer shouldn't come as much of a surprise based on head coach Nick Sirianni's comments when asked about the benefit of having a bye week going into the playoffs. Nick Sirianni, after that report, then met with the media and said, I'm going to meet with the team later. I'm going to relay to them what my plan is. And the plan has been confirmed. An update for the Eagles plan on Sunday, what McClain had reported, that the Eagles are going to rest some starters. There will be other starters who are limited, and there are going to be some starters who dress but will not play. And look, this isn't the third preseason game, right? The Eagles only have so many available players to play. So some of you might be saying, well, the starters are all sitting, right? No, some starters are going to have to play because you only are working with a 53-man roster now instead of a 90-man roster, which is the case all throughout the preseason. And so you think back to Week 18 last year when Tanner McKee led the Eagles backups to a win over the Giants starters. The Eagles played 34 players in that game. 47 dressed for game day. So they had 10 players in uniform who did not play, including 2 reserve quarterbacks and then 8 starters and key contributors. And they listed 11 starters as inactive. I imagine the Eagles are going to have a very similar process in this game against the Commanders that they had last year against the Giants and kind of against the Cowboys as well, although more starters got run in that game, and then they got to rest a little bit later because Philadelphia blew the doors off of the Cowboys. And my thoughts on this, look, I've made this be known. I'd like to see the offense get some quality drives in after that brutal Buffalo second half. I want to see this Eagles offense finding a rhythm, finding a momentum, finding an identity, getting a groove going, getting their confidence up going into the playoffs. And I'd like to see the Eagles vie for the number 2 seed because they haven't lost a home playoff game since 2019. Coming to Lincoln Financial Field, really difficult place to play. If you get that 2 seed and you win in the wild card round, you are guaranteed to host a playoff game in the divisional round. But I will say this, the Eagles are in a unique spot. The Eagles can afford to rest a lot of their starters, and they can still win this game with their backups against the Commanders because Philadelphia has Tanner McKee. And Tanner McKee is a really legitimate quarterback. Nick Sirianni talking about him this morning, saying his biggest strength, quick decisions and how he can read the defense. I'll add on top of that, I've always said this about McKee going back to Stanford and since his rookie year in the preseason, and then we saw it last year in limited action. We saw it when he led the Eagles backups to some terrific drives against the Bengals starters in the preseason. Timing, accuracy, anticipation. He can layer throws in a beautiful manner. So I think if McKee plays, he can play well and he can lead the Eagles to a victory. And if the Bears lose against the Lions, Eagles get that 2 spot. Simple as that. If the Bears win, Eagles will be in that 3 position. The Commanders also probably starting Josh Johnson. I know he played a little bit better against Dallas, but there's a reason he's been on like almost every other team in the NFL. So who will play for the Eagles? Look, they still have some legitimate players who are going to play in this game. Tanner McKee at quarterback, I imagine. Tank Bigsby, Will Shipley, A.J. Dillon at running back. That's a fine threesome at the running back spot. Darius Cooper, Jahan Dotson at wide receiver. Might have to elevate some other players from the practice squad, of course, as I go through this list. Grant Calcaterra at tight end, Cam Latu, Kylan Granson at tight end along the offensive line. Brett Toth, who honestly right now might be better than Cam Jurgens, who I'm not sure how he made the Pro Bowl. Fred Johnson, knowing that you're going to get Lane Johnson back for the wild card round. Drew Kendall, Matt Pryor, Cam Williams along the offensive line. And then on defense, still some solid players here. Howie Roseman's built a really good football team. Josh Uche, Byron Young, who's had some really nice reps the last couple of weeks. Maybe Moro Ajomo, although I don't know if the Eagles want to risk playing him because he's been just incredible this year. My prediction of him being better than Milton Williams this year compared to Williams last year has been spot on. Jeremiah Trotter Jr. at linebacker. Jahad Campbell maybe at off-ball linebacker as well because Nakobe Dean will come back for the wild card round. Brandon Graham at defensive end, defensive tackle. Keely Ringo, Adoree Jackson, Perry Nickerson, Marcus Epps, Sidney Brown in the secondary. So this Commanders team is not that good. They're also very injured. They have Josh Johnson as their quarterback, and Tanner McKee will come into this game very prepared. And I think that he can lead the Eagles to a victory. As far as the Eagles making a roster move, topic number 2 here, as suspected, the Eagles up to some roster maneuvering when they released long snapper Charlie Hewlett earlier this week. He missed a lot of time following that week 3 game, I believe, against the Rams. Or no, it was the Buccaneers game in week 4. Cal Adamatis came in to replace him. Jake Elliott really struggled. Charlie Hewlett came back last week, and Jake Elliott nailed that 47-yarder. Big kick against the Buffalo Bills. I mean, they ended up only winning by 2 points. And I talked about this yesterday, how special teams coordinator Michael Clay said, we have a plan at long snapper. We're not going to unveil it, though, because the Eagles didn't want to give away a competitive advantage. That competitive advantage, roster Tetris, to be able to have some guys play in this season finale against Washington. So with Hewlett clearing waivers, the team signing Hewlett to the practice squad, they're going to temporarily, elevate him to the game day roster to be their long snapper in week 18. Eagles still have an open roster spot to fill, and they could sign a Patrick Johnson, an Andre Sam, a Perry Nickerson, who are players on the practice squad. And then Johnson, Sam specifically, are currently out of temporary practice squad elevations. There's a maximum of 3 times in the regular season until the playoffs begin, and then elevation limits don't exist. So that's the roster maneuvering for the Eagles here. Okay, let's talk about this Eagles offense. So Eagles going into week 18, game 17. There's been 16 games of film that we have seen from this Eagles offense. And it's been a frustrating year, but like Jalen Hurts still going to have over 30 touchdowns again. A.J. Brown, over 1,000 receiving yards potentially. Devontae Smith closing in on that. Saquon Barkley's already over 1,000. Dallas Goedert has 11 touchdowns, most in franchise history for a tight end. And so the Eagles have had some sneaky great production for their offensive skill players and offensive core pieces this year, but it's also been a very maddening offensive season. And so them being maddening, inconsistent, not being a great running team, being one of the worst third down offenses in the NFL. Is that who the Eagles are? Or can they flip the switch going into the playoffs? Kevin Patullo said, I wouldn't say there's a switch. I think we've been a little inconsistent. We know we have it in us to do what we need to do because we've done it in spots. That's what we've got to really lean into and press into and be detailed and do what we have to do. And all those things are true. Can't commit penalties. Got to be more efficient on first down and second down to make third downs a lot easier. You have to run block better. You have to pass block better. You can't miss assignments. Some of the dumbass penalties, you can't commit those. The coaching has to be better. The play calling has to be better. All that is true. And as I've been hanging out in Lancaster, Downingtown, Westchester, Philly area over the last couple of days. I've had a lot of good conversations with some friends and family members about this Eagles offense. And something that I brought up is how, if you think back to when the Eagles won a Super Bowl in 2017, when they made it in 2022, and when they won it last year. Remember in 2017 how the offense with Nick Foles replacing Carson Wentz was kind of bad at the end of the year, and we had some major concerns about the offensive unit going into the playoffs, and then they won that divisional round game against Atlanta in 2017 when they won it like 16-12. The offense wasn't great. Then they caught fire in the NFC Championship game and in the Super Bowl. 2022, something similar, although I'd say that the Eagles offense was more consistent. And then last year, the offense at the end of the year, like this time last year, we were talking about issues with the offense. A.J. Brown was vocal about it. They weren't great in the wild card round against Green Bay. They won 22-10. In the divisional round, down to the wire against the Rams, although they had some explosive plays. The 40-yard Hurts touchdown run, the long Saquon Barkley touchdown run, but that game was still close. What did they do? Caught fire in the NFC Championship game, caught fire in the Super Bowl. And so in 2022, the Eagles averaged 27 offensive points per game with an EPA per play of 0.06 in the playoffs. It was 34.7 offensive points per game with an EPA per play of 0.16 in the regular season. In 2024, Eagles averaged 26.7 offensive points per game with an EPA per play of 0.08. In the playoffs, it was 34.5 offensive points per game with an EPA per play of 0.12. So you see how this Eagles team has had the ability to kick it into gear once the postseason comes around. And in those 2022 numbers that I was talking about, Zach Berman tweeted about these. In the playoffs, 34.7 points per game, EPA per play of 0.16, up from 27 offensive points per game and the EPA of 0.06. So 2022, 2024, and 2017 for that matter, the Eagles were better from a points per game standpoint in the playoffs compared to in the regular season. And I know I've seen some people commenting about that and asking me about it. I think there's some truth to it where you focus a little bit harder, you practice and prepare a little bit more, you're more detailed because the pressure is on, and the Eagles have been better when the pressure is on, and they've played better offensive football when they've needed to put their pedal to the floor. As for what Vic Fangio said about this defense, since the Jalen Phillips trade and over the last 8 games, they're the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. They've been terrific. Pass rush, for the most part, stopping the run outside of the Cowboys and Bears games. And then in that secondary, they've been locked down. Here's what Fangio said. I think we've grown from week to week, which is what you want, particularly if you have a bunch of young guys, which we still do. We're in the stage of guys can get better and better and better, even our veteran type of players. I mean, outside of Brandon Graham, I would guess you would say they're still in the growing stage. They've done that, and that always makes you happy. We've kind of found our niche, the way we like to play, which is something you're always looking for as a coach. The guys have been fun to coach. He also said, I love when I have really good defensive players, thanks to Howie Roseman, because they make me look smarter. This Eagles defense, Super Bowl caliber. I've been saying this for weeks and months at this point. Offense needs to carry the weight. If both those things happen, with the good special teams unit as well, with an elite coaching staff, criminal that Nick Sirianni still doesn't get a lot of respect nationwide and from some fans, Eagles can go back-to-back in a wide-open NFL. How's Jalen Carter doing? So back to being healthy, back to being disruptive with the playoffs around the corner. He had to get procedures done and shots in both of his shoulders, left shoulder, right shoulder. One of the shoulders was causing him problems all the way back in training camp. And about a month ago, Jalen Carter could not do a single push-up. Isn't that crazy for a player who plays so physically dominant, aggressive, and is so violent? Well, Jalen Carter said shoulders felt good, way better than before. I guess that shot really did its thing. 24 years old, shoulder problems, a little bit of a concern going into this offseason because he's contract extension eligible, but he comes back in that game against the Bills. And if it weren't for him blocking that PAT, Eagles might have lost the ball game, right? So he did that, but also coming back with the vengeance, he had a sack and several pressures. That Bills offensive lineman, by the way, is an absolute loser when he said, I think Jalen Carter tried to gouge my eyes out on purpose. Really? It was a swipe up top. Like, you see those plays happen on any given play. All right. Thanks for tuning in here on today's edition of Philadelphia Eagles Now. It is about 3:23 p.m. Eastern right now as I'm getting done recording this. So have a fantastic New Year's Eve. Get 2026 kicked off right. Please be safe. I'll be back tomorrow with some more content, and I'll see you then. Later. Go Birds. Let's go.